It felt like everything should have been a triumphant moment for Tank, a display of dominance in front of the boxing world, a stage he commanded so many times before. Instead, fans got an ending no one anticipated, a controversial draw against Lamont Roach Jr. In the days that followed, frustration and speculation flooded social media. Most people couldn't believe that the fight even ended in a stalemate. They wanted answers, and Tank himself seemed just as dissatisfied. Almost overnight, rumors spread that he was preparing to make drastic changes, casting doubt on long-standing partnerships that had guided him from the bottom all the way to main event glory. Suddenly, what was supposed to be a small hiccup in his perfect run turned into a massive headline, with Tank at the center of a potential coaching storm that nobody saw coming. One family who had flown in to watch the fight, an enthusiastic 50-year-old Pakistani father and his three 30-year-old sons, stood among the crowd, caught between disbelief and genuine concern. They were longtime fans of Tank's explosive style and had spent hours watching highlights of his greatest knockouts, convinced this would be another quick demolition for their favorite fighter. But inside the arena, as the fight progressed, their expressions shifted from sheer excitement to nervous tension. When the final bell rang and the decision came out as a draw, the father gave a stunned look to his sons. They had traveled a long way for a decisive finish, and instead they'd witnessed confusion. They overheard worried whispers around them about whether Tank's corner had miscalculated. Something felt off, even to casual observers. A champion who'd once looked unbeatable had now shown unusual cracks. The father, who had grown up admiring champions from various fight sports, had always taught his sons the importance of loyalty between a fighter and their trainer. So when talk of Tank possibly parting ways with Calvin Ford erupted, it struck a personal chord. Calvin wasn't just some hired hand, he was the person who'd molded Tank from the beginning, giving him stability when everything else around him felt chaotic. For so many fans, the Ford-Tank relationship was something rare and almost untouchable, a testament to how trust can transform raw talent into world-class brilliance. The father and his three sons exchanged quick, puzzled glances when they heard the shocking news about the split. It wasn't a rumor floating on random forums anymore. It was real. The father quietly asked his oldest son why Tank would make a choice that could sabotage everything he built. None of them had an answer. What made this revelation so unsettling was how abruptly it happened. Tank had shown incredible loyalty in the past, always expressing gratitude for the man who took him in as a child and helped steer him away from bad influences. A single subpar performance, even in a controversial fight, typically isn't enough to tear apart a relationship that spans so many years. Yet Tank insisted his career had reached a crossroads. Some claimed he simply wanted a fresh perspective, while others whispered that he needed someone to blame for the Roach fight's outcome. As the days went on, it was clear that the frustration in Tank's tone wasn't fading. Instead, he sounded more resolute, doubling down on his decision to rebuild his team from the ground up. Almost as surprising as the break with Ford was the sudden mention of Barry Hunter, another respected figure in the boxing world, potentially being ousted too. Barry had only stepped in recently, giving Tank added guidance for the Roach fight. Fans assumed it was a move to fine-tune specific aspects of Tank's game, not a complete replacement of Ford. Before anyone could even get used to seeing Barry in Tank's corner, the rumor mill suggested his position was up in the air. Now even Hunter was playing it safe in interviews, carefully choosing his words because he could sense the turbulence around Tank's camp. In private, he reportedly hoped that cooler heads would prevail. But in the same breath, he admitted that boxing is filled with sudden breakups and unpredictable betrayals. Across the boxing world, emotions ran hot. Legends of the sport weighed in on the shakeup, some explaining that great fighters often make big changes after tough fights, while others saw something reckless in Tank's timing. The father from Pakistan and his three sons kept up with every update on their phones, turning from casual fans into borderline reporters for their extended family back home. They had a group chat buzzing daily with questions like, is Tank being impulsive? Is he letting frustration ruin long-term loyalty? Or could this be the best move he's ever made? None of them could come to a definitive conclusion, but the father emphasized that loyalty shouldn't be thrown away overnight. Then again, they all recognized that in elite sports, loyalty and business can clash, and the cracks in that relationship sometimes widen fast. The situation only grew more complicated with the looming possibility of a rematch against Lamont Roach Jr. Fans have been clamoring for it ever since the questionable draw. In the past, a champion like Tank might have brushed off immediate rematch demands, yet something about Roach's performance had genuinely rattled him. Roach showed skill, poise, and the kind of ring IQ that unsettled Tank, forcing him to step off the gas in ways no one expected. To make matters more intense, talk surfaced about a possible May date for that rematch, far sooner than typical for a fight with such high stakes. If Tank was indeed cleaning house, how would he find the right replacements and get fully prepared within such a tight timeline? Adding to the drama was the infamous knee moment during the fight, where Tank took what looked like a knee in the ring, then quickly rushed back to have his face wiped. It was never counted as a knockdown, stirring controversy among spectators and critics. Many argued that if the referee had ruled it a legitimate knockdown, Roach's momentum would have surged. Instead, there was confusion about why the referee allowed Tank the extra moment. The father from Pakistan remembered how the entire arena buzzed with questions in that instant. He told his sons it felt like a missed call and that the scoreboard might have looked different if that moment had been handled by the book. Now, months later, the unresolved argument about that uncalled knockdown only amplified calls for an immediate second showdown. But while Roach sharpened his camp, using the draw to build confidence that he could finish what he started, Tank was juggling more than just trainer issues. Legal entanglements were also back on the scene, including a probation violation that forced him to stand before a judge. Though he narrowly avoided jail time, the extension of his probation and a required donation had to weigh on his mind. Everyone knew that the public's eye was on him, not just as a boxer but as a celebrity whose every move was scrutinized. In an ideal world, Tank would take a few months to refocus, reorganize his team calmly, and ensure his personal life was stable. Yet the hype and potential money around the rematch, combined with his own pride, seemed to be pushing him toward a short turnaround that might leave no room for error. It didn't help that some in Tank's circle quietly wondered if the split from Ford had less to do with actual training and more to do with Tank not looking inward. According to rumors, Ford believed the blame was unfairly placed on him. After all, a trainer doesn't throw the punches, the fighter does. Before that draw with Roach, nobody was questioning their approach, so why did it suddenly become the biggest problem the moment Tank felt disappointment? Even Barry Hunter, typically reserved, hinted that the outcome might hinge on something deeper, perhaps a mental lapse or even complacency in how Tank approached the fight. Critics began pointing out that Tanks who remain undefeated often start believing their own hype, risking the temptation to train less intensely. Whatever the reason, the high-speed unraveling of relationships around him suggested a fighter consumed by frustration, grasping for quick fixes to reassert his dominance. Meanwhile, speculation is rife about Tank's possible new trainer. Some say he's eyeing a big-name coach with a track record of shaping multiple world champions. If that's the route he goes, the stakes are even higher. A new trainer isn't just someone who holds mitts differently. It's an entire philosophy change, new drills, new strategies, and a different perspective on everything from diet to recovery sessions. For a fighter at Tank's level, that can be a game changer, but only if there's enough time to integrate those lessons. 2 months is a blink in boxing terms, especially when a dangerous opponent like Roach is training relentlessly and carrying the confidence of having nearly beaten Tank once already. As the Pakistani father and his 3 adult sons discussed these possibilities, one of the sons argued that sometimes stepping away from past trainers is how champions evolve. He cited legendary fighters who switched camps and returned stronger. But his father pointed out that if this was really about growth, Tank would have handled it more methodically. The father questioned whether Tank was letting anger and disappointment overshadow logical thinking. In such a high-stakes environment, a rash decision could cost him dearly if he steps into the ring underprepared. For longtime fans, watching Tank walk away from Ford cut deep. There were stories of how Ford had been more than just a coach. He'd essentially kept Tank on track in his youth. To many, the emotional weight of their bond made the split feel not just professional but personal too. Roach, for his part, appears to be unbothered by the chaos. He's seizing this moment to push for the rematch, thrilled at the notion that Tank's corner might not be synchronized. When asked about it, Roach joked that the earlier confusion in Tank's camp gave him a blueprint for success. He wants to face the same man as soon as possible, not giving him time to rebuild. If Tank waits too long, maybe new trainers will settle in and patch up his weaknesses. By demanding the fight in May, Roach hopes to find Tank still searching for stability, prone to mistakes. For many fans, the storyline is irresistible. A rising underdog who nearly toppled a star and now looks to capitalize on the champion's disarray. Promoters are already salivating at the potential pay-per-view numbers for a rematch. Controversy sells, and there's plenty of that swirling around. Still, a question hovers in the background. Is Tank's brand strong enough to withstand a second disappointment if the rematch goes poorly? He's always been seen as a knockout artist who intimidates opponents, but Roach challenged that narrative in their first encounter. Another subpar performance, especially in front of fans who remember the knee incident and the unpredictability of Tank's corner, could deal serious damage to his reputation. For the father from Pakistan, who values the purity of a good fight, another fight overshadowed by drama and confusion would be heartbreak, especially after the resources he and his family poured into following Tank's journey. Beyond the Roach situation, the father and sons also heard whispers about bigger fights that could overshadow the rematch. Names like Shakur Stevenson and Devin Haney keep surfacing, sparking a wave of speculation about major bouts that could define the division. Some people think Tank should skip the Roach rematch entirely and focus on the bigger names, securing a major payday and trying to reaffirm his place at the top. Others say that if he ducks Roach now, it would signal fear and avoidance of settling unfinished business. Boxers with championships and undefeated records usually take pride in silencing any question marks. A walkaway might only magnify them. It's not just fans and analysts chiming in. Even older boxing legends have weighed in, making cameo appearances in social media posts to question whether Tank's decision to revamp his team is a calculated move or a meltdown. One revered Hall of Famer pointed out that sometimes fighters need to experience adversity to truly evolve. In his view, Tank's performance indicated that he might have been coasting on talent rather than pushing himself to the limit. Another legend, on the other hand, argued that boxing is about loyalty and that Tank's brand thrived on the relationship with Ford, who'd basically helped raise him. If loyalty could be discarded this quickly, maybe something else was amiss, a deeper frustration or a sense that Tank's personal troubles were catching up with him. Meanwhile, the father from Pakistan tried to keep a balanced view for his sons. He told them that in sports, these breakups can either lead to a career renaissance or spiral into a cautionary tale. He recalled examples in other weight classes where big names switched coaches and ended up losing their next fight because there wasn't enough time to adapt. The father also recalled moments where a new perspective led to instant success, surprising everyone. Sometimes an athlete just needs a fresh voice to unlock the next level. The tricky part is figuring out which scenario applies to Tank. In the midst of all these swirling rumors, the date in May keeps inching closer. Although not officially finalized, the pressure to sign the contract for the rematch is mounting. Roach publicly calls for it, some media outlets report it as nearly done, and fans like the Pakistani family are bracing themselves for the announcement. The family's tickets from their last trip left a deep impression on them, so much so that they're already discussing whether to fly out again for the rematch if it gets confirmed. They love a great redemption story and are secretly rooting for Tank to prove doubters wrong, even if they're troubled by the sudden breakup with Ford. But they're also intrigued by Roach's relentless drive, certain that this next fight could be the one that jolts the entire lightweight division. Every day, new tidbits emerge about Tank's potential new trainer, about the contract negotiations, about behind-the-scenes tension with Floyd Mayweather's camp. Some say Floyd is urging Tank to wait, to get his life in order before stepping into such a high-risk situation. Others claim Floyd is staying out of it. That Tank's autonomy now is both a blessing and a curse. With legal issues still looming over him, the environment around Tank feels volatile, like a fuse ready to ignite if one more issue arises. And with a probable May date, he won't have the luxury of time to fix mistakes. He'll have to do it all, finalize a training team, refine a game plan, and stay out of further trouble in a matter of weeks. Though fans debate every angle, the father and his 3 adult sons keep returning to one question. Is Tank truly in control, or is he reacting out of anger? The father's life experience tells him that decisions made in the heat of the moment can backfire. But the sons point to other champions who took massive risks and came out stronger, forging legacies that overshadowed any early drama. In the end, the father concedes that sports, especially combat sports, are unpredictable. What looks like a bad move could become the key to Tank's biggest victory yet, or it could be the final ingredient in a recipe for disaster. And so the stage is set. The crowd is waiting for an official announcement, hungry to see whether Tank will confirm a rematch so soon after shaking up his entire support system. Roach stands at the ready, confident that he can finish the job if he gets a second chance. Calvin Ford, stung by what he feels as betrayal, remains on the sidelines, disappointed but unwilling to grovel for a spot in Tank's corner. Barry Hunter, quietly watching from the background, is prepared to step away if Tank decides to bring in someone else. And Tank himself stands at the intersection of all these swirling opinions and pressures, grappling with whether he can pull off a personal overhaul without stumbling at a critical moment. No one knows the real answer yet, but one thing is sure, the stakes are higher than ever. If Tank flops in the rematch, it could redefine his entire legacy. If he rises to the occasion, shutting down Roach in definitive fashion, the conversation could swiftly change to how wise and forward-thinking his bold changes were. Every detail, from who holds the pads during training to how well Tank can manage his legal distractions, could tip the outcome one way or another. And that's what keeps people glued to every update, scanning for the next shock or revelation. The father from Pakistan and his sons are eagerly awaiting the final word. They've witnessed the unraveling of the Tank-Ford bond, followed the rumors of Barry Hunter's uncertain position, and mulled over the swirling talk about high-profile trainers. Now they just want to see if Tank's gamble will pay off. They're set to buy tickets again if the rematch becomes official, hoping that the tension in the air translates into a classic fight worthy of all this drama. But if there's anything the boxing world has taught us, it's that nothing is guaranteed, especially when a fighter is caught between past loyalties and future ambitions. For now, all anyone can do is speculate. Will Tank finalize a new coaching setup in time to handle Roach's relentless game plan? Can he keep outside distractions from bleeding into the ring? And if everything goes wrong, will there be anyone left by his side to help him rebuild, or has he already burned the bridges that truly mattered? The father and his 3 sons are just as curious as the rest of us. They've seen plenty of upsets in boxing history, and they've also witnessed extraordinary comebacks. Which path Tank chooses is up to him, but the clock is ticking, and the next twist in this saga could reshape everything we think we know.